Hello, and welcome to Everything I Read in August. And let's get right into it. The first book I read was Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. So, this is about Chandler. She's never felt more like a ghost in her ghostwriting than when she attends a book signing for a celebrity she wrote a book for and they don't recognize her. She meets Finn at a bar afterwards and they have a good but awful experience together. And when he turns out to be her next ghostwriting gig, they kind of struggle to turn their connection off. I give this 4 stars. I love Rachel Lynn Solomon. I've read all of her books, and this one by far is her most spicy one. The characters are pretty interesting, and the author always does a great job of making them very relatable, even if one of them is famous. And to me, she's a must-read author, so I would recommend you reading any of Rachel's books because she's one of my favorites. I then read Billy Summers by Stephen King. Billy Summers is a top-tier assassin with a heart of gold. When a job turns out to be a setup, Billy must switch gears and rewrite his plans entirely. I give this book 4 stars. My mom actually recommended this one to me, and I used to read a lot of Stephen King when I was younger, and I kind of took a long break from reading him, but this is one of his newer books, and it was definitely interesting because it's definitely not like the Stephen King books that I used to read. And it was kind of refreshing for a long book because it is pretty long, but they kind of changed things throughout. Some of the things I didn't care for, like the character is writing a book in the book, and I didn't really care for that. But overall, it's pretty solid, and I thought it was a pretty interesting plot overall. So I would recommend you check out Billy Summers. Then we read Verity by Colleen Hoover for my family's book club. So this is about Lowen, who is an introverted writer who's struggling after her mother passes away. When given the chance to co-write for the world-famous Verity Crawford, she is hesitant since chaos follows Verity. As she reads Verity's works and hidden autobiography, she finds out more about the chaos that follows her. I give this book 4 stars. This is actually my first Colleen Hoover book. I've heard mixed things about Colleen Hoover, so I've never really sought her out, but when my family suggested reading Verity for book club, I was like, it sounds pretty interesting, the plot does. I do wish there was more character development throughout because Lowen, as a character, I feel like we didn't really know her or her past. If it wasn't Lowen being the main character, I almost wish it was like Verity's perspective throughout the book. Overall, the book did pull me in. I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was reading it very quickly, and I didn't want to put it down, so I think that part really makes it successful. Then I reread Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I don't actually think I have that book. I was just double checking. But Book Lovers is about Nora. She's typically like the other girl in most romances, the girl who gets left. Her sister drags her to a small town to try to convince her to start seeing herself as a hero, but Nora keeps bumping into Charlie, who's an editor from home, who butts heads with her. I give this book 5 stars, which is an increase upon my first read. I really enjoy Emily Henry and the way she writes, and the characters are also lovable. I love the small town in this story. I loved how they, were saving a failing bookstore. So, rereading it, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna bump my score up. Then I read for the first time Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. This tells the story of Amir, who's a young boy from Kabul. The story is set against a backdrop of pretty serious events from the fall of Afghanistan's monarchy through the Soviet invasion, and the rise of the Taliban regime. I give this book 4 stars. The storytelling is very immersive, and the perspective is definitely interesting. My copy actually, it looked like it was somebody's copy from when they were in school because there were a bunch of notes in the pages, so it was kind of fun to read the person's thoughts as I was going through the story. And overall, I can see why it's kind of become an instant classic. Then I read Before I Met You by Lisa Jewell. After her grandmother passed away, Betty is ready to begin her life. However, the will her grandmother left behind includes a person unknown to the family. It is like a then and now kind of detective story. And it focuses on the way to happiness in both stories. I give this book 4 stars. It's a very different type of book for Lisa Jewell. Nowadays she really writes like thrillers and mysteries, and this is kind of more like lifestyle almost. There is like a little bit detectiveness, but not really, and it's more about like finding yourself. I'm always kind of hesitant to read then and now stories, especially set in different time periods, because sometimes the time periods to me don't feel authentic. But I really enjoyed how it was like 20s versus 1990s, and it was overall really fun to read. Then I read Graceland by Nancy Crochet. Olivia is hoping her daughter Hope will take her on a final trip to Graceland. Unfortunately, Hope agreed to never return to Memphis due to her daughter Dylan. The trip is full of bumps and leads to acceptance, forgiveness, and of course, grace. I gave this book 3 stars. It was just okay to me. It's likable in parts, but it kind of just feels thrown together in a lot of ways. And then it's a lot of lead up to the resolution, but then the resolution was very short, and it was just kind of like, oh, everything's fixed, but it didn't feel like there was enough there. Overall, you know, the concept was there, but I just don't feel like the execution was there. Then I read Just the Nicest Couple by Mary Kubica. 2 couples and 2 friends and 1 missing husband. Nina thinks her husband Jake is just blowing off steam after an argument, but then after a few days he's not coming home, nobody's hearing from him. And then Nina's friend Lily thinks she may have been the last person to see him before he went missing. I gave this book 3 stars. Overall, it was just kind of like a bland mystery. The story was not developed the way I thought it was going to be. The writing wasn't like super strong, and the twists weren't like especially surprising. I thought it, based on like the cover and like the description, I thought there was gonna be a lot more to it, but it was just kind of there. So those are all the books I read in August, and in August I actually finished my reading goal of 75 books for the year, but I'm gonna keep on going, and maybe I'll get to 100 by the end of the year. So as ever, leave any recommendations below, and I will see you all next time.